Hello. Hello out there. Today is your day. The raffle starts in 10 minutes. Pork barbecue will be to your right. The buffet. Does it look all right? Is it not seeing it?
Well, I see you. How do I get that?
Our last one off.
Well, no. Like the link. Sorry. So that, there you go.
Okay.
There's that. Okay. This is not that.
Oh, well, that ain't good.
Okay. Here, let me see. Sorry.
Put it on private.
Oh, private? Okay.
Yeah. There we go. It's down there. See it? Yeah, let's see it. Go
So I
up to
click
your
on this?
live one. Yeah, it should be just you. Now we should be able to see it.
Okay. And then this is the URL?
Yes.
Okay.
Now go back up. Let me go walk in front and
Okay.
see what we got.
Want me to do the sound on?
Yes, please. The saw-whet owl is a small, obscure creature in the Pisgah National Forest. It comes out at night. It lives in a box. It pops its little head out in the evening. Yo, 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 yo. Yo, 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 yo. Test, test, test.
Check, check, check. Check.
Somebody somewhere will clean out your wounds. Dirty fingers will bury the light. Somebody somewhere will clean out your wounds. Bury the light. Bury the Now we tumble downhill to a fire with a crowd. The flicker becomes thicker as we bottom out. The residents don't even notice our sudden shouts. When your eyes adjust and you see what's in view, discolored and distempered smiles that seem new. Do you realize they were all once like you? I have a feeling you might, feeling you might. Somebody somewhere will clean out your room. Dirty fingers will bury the light. Somebody somewhere will clean out your room. You recognize my noise and you heard about the pit. Been told to be afraid of everything that comes with it. We can talk about it later, but I think you're giving in.
Yo. Yo. Yo, yo, yo. Can you hear it? Can you hear? Can you? Yo, 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 yo. Alright. But I'm scared if we were getting a way stronger signal yesterday when you were doing it from I wouldn't think so. Hello, 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 hello. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Can you hear me? I can't hear it out of this at all. I can't hear it out of that at all. Yo, 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 yo. Hello? See, I can see that. All right. This is what stage gremlins are. Yo, 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 yo. Yeah, I don't have any problem talking up close. It's just when we put it here. Is there something else on here that I'm missing? There we go. Cool. Yeah, it should be. Ooh, that's way hot. Can you hear it now? Good. I think that was. It'll take it a second to kick in. You should be good now.
Test, test.
They get you.
Justice, justice.
She's got it. Okay, cool. And just go ahead and cut. Are you getting ready to use that one or? Okay, yeah, just go ahead and cut that one off.
Test, test. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited everybody is here. I have a couple of announcements for our live audience. So I'm Leah, President and CEO and second-generation family owner of Highland Brewing. I am thrilled that you are here for this really important conversation. So I have to take a deep breath because I'm so excited. So the schedule's popping up here. Our pre-ordered dinners, anybody that pre-ordered dinner, that's going to appear magically with Rihanna's help right around the corner on that table when we take a break in about an hour. And the bathrooms are around the corner. There's a nice little sign on the wall right there. Then you go to your right, you'll see the men's and women's bathrooms. The bar is open during the session. And once your token is gone, we'll take credit over there, touchless experience for your second, third, and fourth beer, so you can keep listening. It'll be great. And that is all. So the next time I talk, which is going to be in a minute or so, we're going to be live streaming because we're part of a much bigger conference. So really exciting stuff. Hang tight. Okay, I'm back. And now we're streaming live. This is really exciting. First time we've done this. So welcome, everybody. We've got guests that are streaming. We've got guests that are here with us today. And I want to give a shout out to the Guild really quickly because they are the reason that we're open. The Guild has done a great job to express how careful breweries would be and that we would follow all the restaurant guidelines. So I am very, very grateful that we can have important conversations together with fresh beer, such as tonight. So thanks for being here. So I listened to Dr. J's talk, and I want to tell you about her first, and then I'll tell you how I listened to her first and what inspired me to even ask her to be here. She's a performer, she is a performer. She's a former professor of communication studies. Dr. J. Jackson Beckham dedicated her academic career to the study of American beer. So she's obviously highly intelligent. Today, she helps craft beverage organizations to develop inclusive, equitable, and just practices that drive success, build communities, and empower individuals through her consultancy, Crafted for All, LLC. She's also the founder and executive director of Craft by EDU, a nonprofit whose mission is to champion equity, inclusion, and justice in the craft brewing community through education and professional development. She's an author, a speaker, a vocal advocate for the craft beverage community. And in 2018, she was named the Brewers Association's first ever diversity ambassador. In 2020, she was named Imbibe's 2020 Beer Person of the Year. Also in 2020, she spoke at the Craft Brewers Conference, which was supposed to be live and wasn't, but it was, I'm embarrassed to say, the only session I listened to of the entire Craft Brewers Conference. And what she said was so impactful to me that I wanted to see it again, but even more, I wanted to see her speak live, and I thought how powerful it would be if I could bring her to Asheville and have her share her message with more people and people outside of Highland Brewing. So here she is. Her message can't be shared enough. And I think it applies so beautifully to any company with a public face at all, not just breweries. So it's a dream come true for me, for Dr. J to be here, to speak at my brewery, and to speak about a brewery for all. This is also her first live speaking engagement since March. So she broke her own quarantine in Richmond to make this trip here, which is an amazing thing to do. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. J.
How's my sound? Oh, that was a little aggressive, I'm sorry. I have a talk that I generally give. In fact, I have a couple of talks, and I'm already ready to go, and then I get here and I change everything like 15 minutes before I start talking. And so this is that part of the talk right now, the made up on the fly part. So as Leah just mentioned, and thank you for that introduction, I am a former college professor, and do we have any educators in the building? Back here, sort of? You just went like this. Okay, so if you're an educator, you know that like what you have is the things you're saying to the learners, and then the things you're saying to yourself. That's kind of like providing commentary on the things you're saying to the learners. And one of the kind of ongoing commentaries that I had as a college professor was about like tracking how many times I dropped F-bombs in my classroom. And like the rule I had with myself was 4 per semester. You only get 4. So, you know, sometimes I'd be talking and it'd be like, poof, and I'd be like, ooh, that's 3, right? And it's only October, so you got to make it through the rest of the semester with only 1 more. Since I have left the hallowed halls of higher education and transitioned into the craft beer space, my role has changed. Now it's about 1 per talk, 2 if the audience is a little rowdy. So, you know, I realize I'm going to have to blow the 1 early and just say, I'm fucking exhausted. I'm exhausted. And I think a lot of other people are really exhausted too. Because this is an exhausting time. And during exhausting times, I am a person who goes back to a group of commitments and tenets that carry me, right? I go back to what makes me tick and what is important. And I think a lot of people do this in many, many ways, right? Whether it's your faith or your kids or your mantras or your CrossFit box or whatever, right? The thing that makes you go. And I think for me, it's been trying to ground myself in all of the commitments that made me make the choices that put me here today. And two of them stand out in my mind right now. One, and I just picked up with this one recently, but it's been like really carrying me through this whole ordeal that is 2020, and that is that worry is a terrible misuse of the imagination. And so I've worked really hard to ground my imagination in things that are hopeful and positive and generative. Because of number two, and that is for me, the privilege I've experienced in my life is a responsibility to give. And a lot of people are like, you're a queer black woman, what kind of privilege do you have? And I was like, well, lots, right? I grew up in a family of parents who loved me, right, and gave me every opportunity that they could make for me. I have always had access to elite education, and excuse me, finished that elite education right here in North Carolina, in Chapel Hill. Sorry for all the Dukies in the house. Sorry, not sorry. So for me, this is a real responsibility to give back. And even then, in 2020, I've had all of these moments of profound doubt. Right? And the question that I keep coming back to is what you're trying to give even worth anything to anyone, given the world we live in today? When everything seems to be contentious and polarized and politicized, is what you're trying to give people of value, because maybe they want a beer without what you have to say attached. And I get that. But I think the conclusion that I came to, and that I find myself in right now, is that what I have to say doesn't have to have value to the world. In fact, it doesn't have to have value to everybody here on the stream, or everybody here in the room. It kind of just has to have value to one person. And I think if what I have to give today has value for one of you, right, then I've succeeded in pushing things forward in a way that I think makes us a more insightful, a more successful, and a more generous community. And I think closing the aperture on what we're looking at is an important act. So as I realize I don't have my PowerPoint up, I'm going to put it up in a minute, I'm going to ask you all to do something challenging. I'm going to ask you to pretend that there is nothing significant happening tomorrow. I'm going to ask you to pretend that that last thing that you saw on the news or on the Twitters or whatever wasn't upsetting. Right? And I'm just going to ask you to kind of close in the focus, right? And think about what we can do as a community of people that are all in this room today because we absolutely adore making, sharing, and drinking craft beer. Right? So give me just a minute and I will continue on. I know, where is it? No, I just can't see. All right. Thank you. Awesome. Is this guy on? Maybe? this way. Okay. Everyone, my lovely assistant, Leah. Can you hit the next slide, please? All right, so here's where we start. We all want to diversify craft beer. And so the $100 billion question is, why is this so hard? And I generally say that this is somewhat of a trick question, right? Because the premise I started with is maybe not true. Right? Maybe we don't all want to diversify craft beer. I think most of us want more diversity in craft beer. But that word diversify is a verb. It implies doing stuff. And I think to some degree, we all don't want to do stuff that it takes to achieve diversity in craft beer. And that might be for a whole lot of different reasons. One, it's hard. Right? It's actually hard. It's risky work, and I get that. Right? Two, a lot of people say, that's not my business to do. Right? It's not my job to do this work. Right? And number three, maybe I do this work and it's not worth it for me. Right? I don't extract any value for it. And so I understand the challenges, but I also say, you're wrong. Right? And so we'll talk about some of that today as we go on. Leah, because I put it in my pocket. Yeah, all right. You can clap, yeah. What we're going to talk today about is what I hope is a somewhat holistic picture of inclusion, equity, and justice in craft beer. And the trio of terms I put out there are fans, hands, and brands. Right? So your fans, if you are someone who makes, produces craft beer, those are the folks who come to your tap rooms and buy your beer at retail establishments. Right? The consumer. Your hands, that's your employees and staff, and we'll throw in anybody you might have a partnership with, vendors and suppliers in that category as well. And your brand, that's all of your messaging, your packaging, your spaces, design, right? When you come in this beautiful room at Highland, right, that's part of the experience, so that's part of brand as well. And what we'll try to do is extend everything we're talking about across these three contexts. So we'll start with fans, and this is the charts portion of the talk. So if you're a chart person, Brian, you'll see lots of charts here. So I have to give you a little bit of a verbal legend because I wanted to make the chart as big as possible. So if you need me to slow down, please let me know. So we're going to start with some basic segmentation of craft beer consumers across 4 different defined market areas in North Carolina. Right? We're starting with gender first. So if you look at that bar all the way on the left, right, that is the national number, right? Craft beer drinkers nationwide. Right? Make sense? That first bar heading to the right here. Wait, do I have a laser thingy? Yes, okay. All right, this bar right here, this is the Charlotte defined market area. Right? This next one right here, this is, okay, they're smushing things together. So this is Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem. Right, that's the third one. All right, next one over of interest to you all, this is going to be, Greenville, Spartanburg, Asheville, Henderson. Anderson. Does that sound right? That's everybody around here? All right. So for you all, that's the one of interest. And then the last one is Triangle RTP. Right? The very end line, all the way to the right, is the general population of North Carolina, not craft beer drinkers. All right, so that's just the general pop. So these first 2 slides, we're going to talk about gender segmentation among craft drinkers. I like to start with gender because there's only 2 categories that we index, not at all, but that we index. And so it's easy to talk through the charts. So you can see all the way on the right, right? General population, just like most states, it's about 50-50, right? As far as men and women. And then what you see here is how we're performing in comparison to that statewide index. Most of North Carolina defined market areas, as you can see, outperform the national average a little bit as far as craft beer drinkers. However, still not close to 50-50. Right? Nationally, we've got about 31% of craft beer drinkers identified as women. So there's some remaining opportunity to reach female drinkers, for sure. So this next chart, again, you might not need it, but it helps kind of set up the charts that you're going to see forward. So what you see here is an indexed version of that same data. When we talk about indexes, we're basically saying how does it compare to the general population in the same area. So what you're seeing here is that in every defined market area in North Carolina, women under-index, right? They're making up a kind of disproportionately small amount of the drinking population when compared to the general population. Conversely, you see that men are over-indexing. Right? Make sense? Okay, it's not rocket surgery, I know. All right, so next slide. I always find this was interesting. We're looking at age. So if you can't see because I'm in your way, that rusty red color is millennials. Right? This data set defines that as anybody between 21 and 35. Then we have your Gen Xers, that's me. Anybody between 35 and 55. We have your boomers, that's 55 to 70. And then silent generation, anybody over 70. What you can see here is that compared to the general population of North Carolina, generally, millennials over-index as craft beer drinkers consistently, right? This doesn't mean we need less millennials, it just means we need more of everybody else. So you can see often, for me, the big opportunity is boomers. Right? They make up a really significant part of the population, and a lot of times we don't reach them particularly well. Again, you can see here significantly over-indexing on millennials in pretty much every geography. Same thing with Gen Xers. But then when you get to folks who are a little bit older, right, neglected. So here is race and ethnicity. Everybody gets like, this is the grisly one. So what you're seeing here is, again, these are your national craft beer drinking stats. On the far right, general population of North Carolina. Right? And then in every various defined market area, what you generally see almost across the board is some significant under-indexing of everyone who's non-white. And again, if you want to see indexing, there's that information. So, though I just presented you a couple of basic demographic categories, and I think a lot of people see that information and go, what? Right? What I also want to make sure that is on the table here is that when I define diversity, I do mean everybody. Right? And I do mean diversity not just demographically, but I mean diversity in experiences. I mean diversity in thinking. I mean in diversity in background. But this is a great starting part for our conversation. So that's a picture of your fans here in North Carolina. Let's talk a little bit about your hands, right? Meaning folks who work for you, and your vendors and partners. So about 1.5 years ago, the Brewers Association ran its first brewery benchmarking survey, which was about determining who works in our industry so that we can kind of see where things are. This was the first kind of large coordinated effort of its kind. And we saw what we expected to see. We'll put it that way. So what you're looking at here are the benchmarking survey results for race and ethnicity. At the top, you've got service staff, non-managers, and you're working all the way down to ownership. You can see the legend here at the bottom if I get out of the way. And the story is fairly simple, right? At least in terms of race and ethnicity, most of the racial and ethnic diversity in our industry is concentrated in non-management positions, and particularly in the front of the house. When you get to ownership, that's where you really see a dearth of ethnic and racial diversity. Similar chart for gender. And the story is pretty similar. Most of the gender diversity is concentrated in front of the house positions, most of that in non-management. You do see this kind of spike up to 22% ownership, female ownership in breweries. However, that's largely attributed to husband-wife teams. So if the story for our fans was like, wow, we have a lot of opportunities, when we look at our hands, we're like, wow, we have a lot more opportunities here. And then lastly, we'll talk about your brand, right? Of course, we can't monitor all the brands out there. We've got 8,000 breweries out there. But the question here is, are you taking the temperature of how your brand's communicating and what it looks like? So I'm going to ask you to do a little 30-second experiment here, right? Get on your boop bop, right? Your smartphone. Sorry. Okay, boop boop bop bop bop, right? All right. I want you to go to the social media account, Twitter, Facebooks, whatever, of your favorite non-Highland Brewing Company brewery, right? And I just want you to scroll, right? Through their last however long worth of posts. And I just want you to kind of develop an impression. If seeing what's there tells you, right, who is welcome and represented, is that really a welcoming and well-represented place? Right? So I'm going to give you a little survey. Right? Thumbs up is, yeah, sweet. Right? This is, I don't know. Right? And this is, secretly they failed the test. All right? So what do you got? Wait, I got a raised hand. What's the raised hand? And a lot of dogs. Okay. I like dogs. Okay. All right, so what, give me that again. Okay. Anybody like, yeah? No, okay. Yeah, so when I say, are you taking the temperature, that's a simple example. So what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about what I think are the 3 biggest mistakes that we make when we start thinking about the question of inclusion, equity, and justice in beer. Right? 3 big problems, right? We'll try to get some solutions to them. And because I'm an educator, I can't stay away from metaphors, so we're gonna deliver these via metaphors, because metaphors make it sticky, right? So we'll do it that way. So our first problem, and I actually think this is the biggest one, the problem of means and ends. All right? And here's the metaphor. We'll look at a black belt. Right? So we don't have a big crowd here because social distancing is awesome, but I'm going to ask anyway. Anybody in the room practice martial arts? Okay. Any martial art? Leah, you're in. Okay. All right, and you, sir? Okay, 2 Taekwondo practitioners. Was it more than 3 days in 5th grade? 3 years, okay. 3 years, 3 days, that's fine. All right, so what's your name? Arthur. All right, we've got Leah and Arthur who have a background in Taekwondo. All right, so Leah, given your extensive 3 days in Taekwondo, can you stand up? Okay. I just want you to turn around and size Arthur up there for a minute. Okay. Leah, I was going to ask you, do you think you can take him? I know, it's tough. It's a tough call. All right, Leah, I'm going to help you out. Clear your throat. Okay. Say loudly, but without aerosolizing at all. Say, I have a black belt in Taekwondo. All right. Leah, when you were saying that, did you feel like the katas and forms like coming to you? No. Okay. So would you say that declaring that you have a black belt in Taekwondo made you no more capable of kicking Arthur's ass? Okay. It's true. I'm going to tell you a secret, everyone. I'm going to tell you a secret. Saying that you value diversity also does not do anything to change the scenario that you have going on in your organization. It's literally like saying I have a black belt and expecting you can do more ass kickery. It just doesn't happen that way. Right? So for me, this is a problem of flipping the ends and the means. Right? Diversity is an end. Right? It's the place we arrive where we express the beautiful identities of everyone after we have done some other stuff to get there. Right? It's the end, it's not the means. Right? And we need to sort that order out if we're gonna do any work. So the question is, what do you do? Right? How do you get started on the work to flip those ends and means to the right back to their correct places? And for me, this is actually pretty similar to martial arts. Right? You have to cultivate habits of mind and body. Right? So what do I mean by habits of mind and body? When we talk about it in the organizational space, I call it habits of attitude and action. Right? Attitude has to do with your cognitive processes, your thinking. Right? So do me a favor. I'm going to say some words. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind right back after me. Right? Ready? Peanut butter. Do you notice? Who said hot sauce? Yes. All of you said jelly. Why? They just go together. Right? If we're going to talk about this in a very shabby scientific way, what we'll say is that an association has been made in your mind. Right? And actually, when your brain makes associations, right, what it likes to do is figure out, are you making this association over and over again? Because if you are, I'm going to make it easier. Right? I'm going to make this neurological pathway really, really firm and automatic. Right? So that without even thinking, jelly comes, because that association has been made so many times. Right? The thing is, it would actually take you a little bit of conscious effort to say something else than jelly, right, if somebody presents you with peanut butter, because that association now is the default. Right? This is actually how implicit bias works. Right? It's not that you're a bad person or that you have horrible ideas. It's that an association has been made so frequently in your brain that your brain has decided, yes, this is automatic. We'll do this for you. Right? Efficiency. Okay. The problem is, if you say craft beer and everybody goes, oh, millennial white guy with a beard, right? We gotta kind of undo that association so there's more possibilities for craft beer. Right? So this is about cultivating more possibilities. Same thing, habits of action. Right? This is about what you do habitually in the spaces you go. So I have a kid. He's actually the smartest and most handsome child on the planet. I don't know if you knew that. But when he was young, we took him to a lot of breweries. And not all breweries, right? Not all breweries are okay with kids. But we figured out very quickly which ones were, and we didn't have to ask anybody. Right? So how did we figure it out? Trivia. Google, social. No, I'm old. You looked around, yeah. The bartenders, right? You picked up signs from the space, right? Like all these quiet, maybe not explicit, but implicit messages that came that said, yeah, your kid's cool here. That's about cultivating, right, habits of action, right? Ways that help people understand how to move through the space, what they're permitted to do, and what's not acceptable in a space. So as you start cultivating these habits of attitude and action, it's important that you start by defining your diversity. If you are an organization that says, we are looking to diversify, then you should ask yourself, what on earth does that mean to us? Right? I always tell the joke, I think like if I run into my like homies in Montana, they'll be like, Jay, why do you keep talking about this? But really, when I landed in Montana, I changed the demographic makeup of that state. Right, like, right? So to be 100% honest, in Montana, diversity means something different than it does here in North Carolina, right? Just because of who's there and what the opportunities are. So I think it's important to define your diversity and to give it context, right? If the context is the greater Asheville area, then that's the context you're working in. Right? Second, you need to connect it to your organizational goals, and I cannot overstate this. Right? When we're talking about inclusion, equity, and justice, this is about alignment with what you're already doing. Right? How many of you work in craft beer? How many of you have a whole bunch of extra resources and capacity right now? Right? If these efforts are not aligned with what you're already doing, they're not going to happen. So this needs to be part of your broader goal structure. If your goal is to reduce your debt, right, or grow your audience, or expand your distribution geography, or any of those types of goals, it needs to be attached to what you're doing here. Right? And then third, you should create a responsibility structure. And that's really about creating some system of accountability so you can keep track of this work and understand when you're making progress. Right? We'll say a little bit more about that later. So, where you should start for me is making strategic goals. Right? And a strategic goal is not necessarily hyper-specific. Right? It's really just a kind of broad consideration of where you want to get to, right, with regard to your inclusion, equity, and justice efforts. And once you have that goal, you need to make sure that it is a measurable goal. Right? But I will be 100% clear, when I say measurable, I do not mean quota. Right? If there was somebody at the door, saw me come in the brewery and went, yes, right, that would suck. So we're not talking about quota. We're talking about measuring things that explain what things look like, sound like, feel like, once you have achieved the level of diversity that is possible for you. All right, second problem, second metaphor. I already know in North Carolina, y'all are familiar with this one. I go some places, they're like, we don't really have ants. And I'm like, what? So ants, right? And you know that like when it gets warm, they all just like come out because they've been hiding somewhere, and they all come out at the same time. And for me, they come out in the kitchen because that's where I don't want them to be. And when I watch the ants in the kitchen, right, they're all like following these little like ant trails, right? The ant trails all everywhere. And I had this moment where I was like, why are they doing that? Like what? Like, you know, in my kitchen is essentially South America, right, in ant scale. So like, why are they walking in one line? They could go anywhere. So I looked, because that's what the Google's for, and I found out that ants do this really complicated scent pheromone thing where they okay, this is my model. They're like leaving little trails behind themselves. And they're saying like, here's the way to food, or like, go that way you'll die, or whatever, right? And they're leaving little trails, and the ants that come behind follow them. In the beginning, before I had the Google, and I understood about the ants behavior was completely crazy to me. Right? Like I was like, ants are crazy. I don't know, why are they doing this? And I didn't understand, and I thought it was insane. Once I read Google, I realized I just don't have the physical apparatus that I need to perceive what's going on with the ants. So I'll say this 2 times because I think it's important. Just because you don't perceive the things that are affecting other people's behavior doesn't mean it's not real. Right? Just because you don't perceive the things that are affecting other people's behavior doesn't mean those things are not real. So for me, the things that affect people's behavior in the ways that I care about the most are barriers. Right? Not necessarily overt things that are kind of hammering them on the head or threatening them overtly. They're barriers that are simply just redirecting their behavior, right? Or redirecting where they want to be. And so the question you should ask yourself as a purveyor of craft beer is, what are the barriers that are between me and someone that I want to have a relationship with? Whether they are a consumer, or an employee, or a vendor, or some other partner. The hard thing here is that you have to talk to people. You have to figure out what those barriers are by just getting in the community and chatting with people. But I will at least say that there are 4 kind of types of barriers that I look out for. Resource barriers. These are barriers that are usually in place when people believe they don't have the resources to access you. Right? A lot of times we think this is all about money, but it's not. Right? I think in craft beer, a lot of time it's about expertise. Right? We are frequent and enthusiastic wielders of our expertise, and in some ways that can present a barrier to people. Geographic barriers. Right? There are lots of geographies in North Carolina and around the rest of the US where people have never been exposed to a craft beer brand. It has never graced their shelves. They have never seen a festival. Nobody ever lugged a jockey box over there. Right? So geographical barriers are real. Cultural barriers, right? This might have to do with embedded cultural histories in a space or the people who live there. I know, and I'm going to say it, I know one thing about Asheville is that there is a vibrant conversation about gentrification here and craft beer's role in it. Right? That is a significant cultural barrier for some. And then social barriers, right? How are things moving in a space socially that allow people or discourage people from hanging out? Right? Lots of social barriers get interesting made-up words attached to them. Right? So a lot of times we hear things like, oh, that place is really bro-y. Right? That's a pretty hard social barrier for people who don't want to be bro-y. Right? So all of these things can be operating as barriers in your space. Your goal as someone who's advocating and working for inclusion, equity, and justice is to focus on removing those barriers, locating and remediating. First, you need to stick to those established goals. You cannot do everything. So if you went through the goal setting before, stick to the goals you set and let that be your guide. Second, focus on active tactics for the removal of that barrier. Remember that talking about it won't make it go anywhere. And number 3, lean on that responsibility structure that's keeping you accountable. So if we go back to our diagram, you've got a strategic goal set, right? And now you attach some tactical actions to that goal. Right? So let's say, for example, you said, what? Our brewery is overrun with millennials. We gotta get some older folks in here, right? Your question might be, all right, what are the barriers that are keeping older consumers out of this space? Right? I actually got an opportunity to work with some folks on this, and it was interesting what they said, so I'm curious if any of you might have some things. If you could kind of put your mind, I know you all are terribly young in heart in the room, but put your mind in an older person's space and say, what are some of the barriers that might keep them out of a brewery? Noise, that's huge, yes. Yeah, noise, so accessibility issues, especially like mobility. Beer styles, right? You know? Sorry, I'm with you. Yeah, tiny print, right? So, or there's like a menu that's like got small things and there's only one, right? All of these things can serve as barriers, right? And so the question might be like, okay, what sort of tactical actions can we take in order to remove those barriers for some folks, right? Mobility issues might be about like changing the way your tables are oriented, right? Things like printing small menus that can stay on tables that have great big type, right? So these are practical things, but they're tactical actions, and that's what I want you to focus on, things that you can do. All right, third problem, and I call this one the one and done. Anyone in here, sitting in here, like directly involved in recipe formulation for beers? One? I mean, yeah, you're the one. I'm going to talk to you now. Sorry, what's your name? Trace. Awesome. Trace, so when you are making beer, right, and you're sitting down and you're thinking about this recipe, and you were like, yeah, okay, here's the recipe, and then you brew it, how many times do you think you have to brew it before you're like, yeah, this is the one, like when you're really happy with it? 3 to 14. Somebody over here said 1. There's heckling. Is that you, Arthur? Heckling? Okay. Yeah, 3 to 14. So many, many times, right? Or at least a couple, right? That makes sense to me, right? It's really rare that like something complicated like brewing results in like perfect success by doing something one time, right? Anybody in here ever swung a golf club? Right? Like you can work on a golf swing for like an entire lifetime and still be crap. Look at Charles Barkley, right? Things that you want to be good at that are complicated, you have to do it more than once. And here's the really crazy thing. Organizations all over the country have one diversity training thing, and they're like, done. We're good now. And I'm like, what? That's insane. Right? That's insane. In fact, the research in the area says that if you're doing a certain type of diversity training, you're probably actually making the situation worse rather than better because people resent being told that they're doing wrong, or people are like, oh, we did the training, so everything must be cool, and that weird thing that happened that was like definitely shady, I will not report it because we did do the training, so we're good. Right. So, what you need to do is sign up for work that doesn't really end. Right? A really lovely friend of mine at New Belgium put it in this great way, and she said, you never really graduate from diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I was like, yeah. Right? It's kind of an ongoing improvement process, like your janky golf swing. Right? So the only way that you understand that you're getting better as you iterate is to assess, right? Make sure you're collecting some results and some data about your efforts. You've all heard that aphorism, what gets measured gets managed, and this is absolutely no different. You're gonna have different types of assessment strategies based on what you're doing. So when you're talking about your fans, you can look at things like sales, right? You can look at things like social mentions, you can look at things like growth. When you're talking about your hands, right, you can use things like employee engagement surveys or basic HR data. And when you're looking at your brand, the social will give you freakish amounts of data, largely for free. So attach assessments to all of your efforts. And when we put it all together, right, in our kind of basic organizational structure, what you're looking at is a large strategic goal. Right? You're looking at a set of tactical, actionable actions that you can take to try to reach that goal. And then you're going to attach one or more assessment measures to each action. And the idea is, if it works, super, re-up and do it again. If it's not working, tweak and adjust, and then do it again. Right? But the whole important part here is do it again. Right? No ones and dones. So when you're talking about strategic planning and tactical action for inclusion, equity, and justice work, the biggest takeaway I have for you is that you can treat it like any other process in your organization. Right? Too many times this type of work gets tacked on as a side effort, right? Or like a kind of, a charity humanitarian thing. And my thing is no. Right? This is a process that you can use to make every other process in your organization better. Right? Because inclusion, equity, and justice make everybody's experience better. And so you have, all of a sudden, more engaged consumers, right? More engaged employees, a brand that is more open and more viral. So, 3 problems, remember, right? Do not switch the ends and the means, right? Declaring that you have a black belt does nothing. Declaring that you value diversity does just as much. Remember to get rid of barriers rather than bait people, right? Nobody wants to come to the crappy hip hop night anyway, so just worry about removing the barriers that are keeping people away. And then lastly, think about re-upping and iterating your process as if you were crafting a new recipe. Don't fall for the one and done. You're going to have to do things multiple times before you get them right. So, all the streaming people are like, what's happening? If you want a little bit more oomph on some of the things I just talked about today, there's a set of resources available from the Brewers Association that are free to members. You can download them right now. Just go to brewersassociation.org, search for diversity, and you can find this five white paper set of best practices for small breweries who are embarking on this work. It's not terribly in-depth, but it'll get you going. And hopefully, if you are in the North Carolina Craft Brewers Conference for the duration, you will see a much more extensive discussion of different things you can do in different parts of the organization throughout the week. That has been a really amazing opportunity that the Guild, thank you, Guild, has offered in terms of the programming for this conference. With that, I'll close and say, for me, the funny thing about diversity is, well, there's several funny things. Not funny, haha, but funny, interesting. One is that no matter how positive this can be, there are those who will be threatened. Okay? There are some people who hear the word diversity and it's like immediately, viscerally negative reaction. And that's something that I have been dealing with for years and trying to figure out how to wrestle with. And so, in addition to giving you something, I will ask something of you. And I will ask this. If you are talking about diversity in craft beer, in your business, or somewhere else, what I'd like you to do is shift the language that you're using to talk about it. And I'd like you to shift away from the language of problems, because nobody wants to be part of problems. No one is signing up for problems. And I want you to shift to the language of opportunity. Because for all of the kind of imbalances, right, underrepresentations, and things that we have going on in our industry, what I see is opportunities. We have an opportunity, right, to do something as basic as sell more beer, something as empowering as give somebody a career and a job, right, and something as transformative as introducing an entire practice, right, that has to do with like science and art and a little bit of magic, right, because let's be real, beer, right? We have, as a group of people in this room, remarkable opportunities. And so that's my ask for you. If someone talks about craft beer's problem, please tell them, let's talk about craft beer's opportunities, because people love signing up for opportunities. So thank you so much for spending this time together, both all of you on the live stream and those of you in this room. I have no idea where we are clockwise, but if we've got a couple of minutes, I'll be happy to take some questions. Otherwise, we're going to have a beer break, and I'm kind of excited. And I destroyed Leah's cooker. It's in pieces on the ground. Sorry. Thank you.
You said you'd drop another F-bomb if we got wild.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't actually. So, any questions? And you're allowed to ask them. Really. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to summarize for the streamers. You asked, no, you literally asked one of the top 3 questions I am asked, which is, if you don't already have a pool of diverse patrons or folks to work from in terms of like imaging for your socials, what should you do? Because if you go reaching for stock photos, you may lose some authenticity. Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is punt, because this is going to come up in the conversation we're going to have after beer break. And I also talk about it in one of the sessions later this week. But know that this is like a really hot topic, and you are not alone in wondering, like, what do we do? Yeah, because you're right? Like if you stage that photo or you go to stock photography, you're like, that's not who we are, right? That's not real or authentic. Right. Like you're forcing it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so hold on. For streaming people, you're just going to have to watch the other presentation. Any other questions? Do I have a black belt? No, but I practiced jiu-jitsu for several years, so, which is, oh yeah. So the question was if there was one thing you should concentrate on first. So obviously when I think of like my fans, hands, brands, Theo, they're totally integrated, like one feeds the other, but I will say hands, for me, is the one. And I will say that because if you're doing lots of outward messaging around your inclusion, equity, and justice, but it is not reflected in what's happening in your own house, your authenticity is going to be suspect. And really great example here was June, the month of June. Right. I don't know how many dozens, really, actually maybe hundreds of brewers I talked to who were like, what are we supposed to do? Or should we make a statement about what's going on in the country right now? Like, we put the black square on our social, what do we, right? Like, everybody was having this like crisis of messaging at that moment. And I think what was really tough for people to say that, like, how do we say we support this, and then we look at our staff and we haven't hired anyone from the community that is more diverse than our staff, right? And so it becomes a difficulty to kind of speak outwardly from a condition that isn't true of your own space. So if I had to say what to focus on first, I would say clean up your own house first, and then speak from that position of strength. Yeah.
Dave, following up on Kevin's question, I feel like a lot of the time I have people who ask, I post these jobs, and
Yeah.
why you're in Malachi, and I know that you can delve into recruitment and pipeline development in your practice for all, but
Yeah.
don't subscribe.
Yeah, so for me, it's about pipeline development. That's the key, right? If you want to do hiring to like more open, right? You want to open up your hiring, and you find that when you go through your resumes, you don't have a very big or diverse applicant pool. What you need to do is cultivate a pipeline. So on the very kind of small and tactical level, this might be just making sure you're placing your ad in many more places than you were placing it before, right? So this might mean looking beyond the kind of big job boards, trade job boards, or even, a lot of people are like, we post our jobs on our own social, and I'm like, you've defined the problem for yourself. So you might have to reach and say, okay, where can we put our ads to make sure that a representative group of this community are seeing them, right? It might also be like, how are we freezing our ads, right? Because a lot of people, someone in this room actually told me a story how they self-selected to not apply for a job because of, determining that like, I don't think I'm qualified, right? And a lot of people are like, we just need somebody who's reliable and ready to learn, right? So a lot of times it's making sure your job is phrased in a way that'll attract broad attention. And I think one thing that people miss out on that's really important is if you are making a conscientious effort to both broaden and diversify your applicant pool, that means more applications. And so you need to be prepared to dedicate more HR resources or other resources to processing more applications if you're going to invite them in. But yeah, great question.
What's your favorite beer?
Oh my gosh, the favorite beer question. I honestly don't have a favorite beer. I'm a home brewer, so I make like everything, and I like everything. I'm a seasonal drinker, so I kind of shift around in styles, but I would say, what? Thunderstruck. I'm like, people are just giving me names. I'm like, also Thunderstruck. Yeah, I don't have a favorite, but let's see. I am drinking a Gaelic, which I think is freaking delicious right now. So we'll call it Gaelic for the moment. All right. So thank you, everybody. Back.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Dr. J. So I only teared up one. your dinners, if you ordered dinner, pre-ordered, then they're labeled with your name on the side. We've got a 30-minute break. There's also a food truck by the tap room if you're hungry and didn't order anything. And the bar is open, and I'll see you back here at 6:30. Bye, streaming attendees.